You know, there's an art to making bread, and I guess some of us have tried to make bread and it just doesn't turn out right, or it turns out different every time. And that kind of, I guess that kind of goes with the territory, because, you know, a commercial bakery, I have found out, basically what they'll do is they'll get the ingredients exactly right and control the ingredients, especially the flour. You know, if they're going to make a certain kind of bread, they will get a certain kind of flour and never vary from it. And the rest of the ingredients, like how much sugar you put in and yeast and other things that you put in there, they can vary too. Now, the thing that can vary most at home is what's the temperature of your kitchen, and you know, what's the humidity, what's your elevation, and those things make a difference too. And that's kind of why there's more of an art to making bread than there is just mixing up the ingredients like the cookbook says. And I equate it to, you know, you can learn all of the basics about how to play the piano, or all about, you know, how to play guitar. I mean, you can know where all the notes are, and you can look at the, you know, look at the music and play the notes. And if you practice a little bit, you can play a guitar or a piano quite well, except if you don't have the art. You know, it just doesn't sound right. In other words, I can't play a piano like Billy Joel can play a piano, no matter how much I try. Now, the expertise that you need to play the piano or something like Billy Joel does, that's quite an extreme example. But there is that element of art into making bread, and I think I've learned that art, and I'm going to show you how I make bread. And finally, after 5 or 10 years of doing it wrong, I think I've got it down, at least for the kind of bread I like. Okay, first of all, here's the ingredients and the stuff you're going to need to make it. This is bread flour, and you know, you can get that anywhere practically, but that's what I've got. And this is barley flour. Now, we grind that ourselves. We have some barley down there that we use, and olive oil, and plain salt, sugar, raisins, no, that's not right, yeast. We usually keep this in the freezer, and it's dry active yeast. And then this is gluten. Now, I like the bread to be nice and, I don't know what you call it, chewy, or it's not chewy, but, you know, but anyway, we use gluten because we like our bread that way. And of course some raisins, because I want to make raisin bread. Now, you need a pan, of course, to bake it in, and some, we use olive oil spray. You can use any kind of spray you want, but we like olive oil. And the idea is to spray this pan down and then coat it with a little bit of flour so that the bread won't stick and burn on it when it's cooking. So those are the basic things that you need. Now, the first thing we're going to do is make preparations for the bread to rise. And I figured out a very simple way to do that. I'm going to use the oven itself, and all we're going to do is I'll just turn the oven on, let it warm up, and then just turn it off. And by the time we're done mixing all these things, it'll cool down to the point where it'll work for rising the bread really nice. Now, you've got to watch this, because you don't want it to be above 110 degrees in there when you do this. And you've got to look at it, because it'll rise at different speeds. And I don't know why it does that, but sometimes it rises fast and sometimes it rises a little bit slower. So you have to watch it to get it to rise right. And I'll show you how to do that. Okay, there's our oven. As you can see, we've got a couple little thermometers on there, but you can see they're well below 100, so the oven is off. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to get a little bit of water in this oven, because water helps it cook. So I'll just put a little, you just need a little bit in the bottom of this pan. And the idea is that while it's warming up, that'll evaporate, and by the time it's done cooking, you know, most of it will be gone, or all of it will be gone. So you really need it at the beginning stages. And so here we go. And what we're going to do is I'm going to just, well, it's 350. It really doesn't matter what it's set on. I'm going to let it sit there and warm up for about 5 minutes and then turn it off. And if it's too hot, well, we'll open the oven door. Okay, now we use a bread machine here to mix the bread, and that's all we use it for. And as you can see, it says it'll make it under an hour, and here it's got a fast bake setting where it'll go under an hour. Now what we do is when you use this setting, it it'll mix and stop and mix for about 15 minutes. And that's when we take it out of here. So this is only used to mix the bread. Now, you can use a mixer like this if it's got a dough hook, like you can see me grab. Can't quite get it out of there. If it's got a dough hook, any kind of mixer that's got a dough hook, what you can do is duplicate what that bread mixer over there will do, because I have basically written down the timing that it goes through, and that last one where it says it's starting to rise, that's when it starts to rise, and then it'll start to bake in about 15 minutes after that. So this, you can duplicate this, and I'll put this down and write it a little neater for you. But you can duplicate that in just any old mixer, and then set it up to rise. Okay, it's been a couple of minutes, and walking over here to the oven, I can see that the electric heaters are red, so I'm going to turn it off now. Now it's probably overdone, but that'll warm the oven up nice. The next thing I want to do is start the yeast. I don't know what you call it, activating the yeast. Now you really don't have to do this, I've been told, but I want to do it because, I don't know, it's just a habit. So, here's what we do. Okay, the recipe I've got calls for 1 1/4 cups of milk. Now, we're going to use kefir. Now, this is homemade kefir, and so we're going to use that instead of milk. I like it. I think it makes it a little bit richer. So what we'll do is I'll pour in 1 1/4 cups. There we go. Okay, now you'll have to adjust that when you're baking. It's better if this is warm. So what I'm going to do is I'll put a little bit of sugar in it as well. 1 teaspoon of sugar, I believe. And then we'll put it in the microwave for about a minute and warm it all up nice, and then we'll put the yeast in it. And here's our yeast. And what we usually do is we put 1 whole tablespoon of yeast in there. There we go. Anyway, what I'm going to do is mix this up now. And put this in the microwave oven and warm it up a bit. Okay, now, the next step is we're going to mix up our flour. Now, this will take 2 cups of flour. And so we'll put that in right now. Okay, now, there's 2 cups of flour. Now, where I put the barley in, this is kind of where it's a little bit of a guesswork. I just try to put a little bit of barley in it, and I'll show you. Maybe an 1/8 of a cup of barley. Now there we go. I'm going to have to grind some more of this. I'm just about out. There we go. Now we pull the mixing basket out of the mixer, and what I do is put this right in here like that. And then we'll mix the other things in it. We'll need, let's see, salt. 1 teaspoon of salt. So 1 teaspoon of salt goes in. And I believe 2 tablespoons of olive oil. 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And we like to put in a tablespoon of this wheat gluten. Like I said, there's 1 tablespoon of that. That's this wheat gluten. And let's see, I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. So now this goes in here. And this goes over to the bread machine. And we start it up. So we put it in here, push it down, make sure it's seated well. And of course we better plug it in. And we'll set the settings right, and then start. Okay, the thing you want to watch for when it's going is look at how thick it is. Now, it's hard to represent this, but see if I get a fork or and kind of, get it off the walls and that sort of thing. Get it off the walls. What you want it to do is you want it to, get all the bread mixed in, and then you have to look at that mixture level. It takes a couple of minutes to mix up and see if it looks right. Now, again, it's a difference between, does it look like pancake dough, or is it so dry that it looks like, that it's, I don't know how to describe it, it's just too dry. So you got to make it kind of dry, but not really dry. So let's let that go for a little bit. Now if we go over here and look at this in the bottom, now pay attention really close if you can see it. See how on the bottom it's kind of sticking and swirling around? What you want it to do is get thick enough, and it'll do that as you mix it here, to where it'll start picking that stuff up off the bottom. And you don't want it much thicker than that. So as I push this around, you can see it kind of, it's kind of sticking and but this is trying to absorb it. You see? And I think we lucked out and made it just about right, because that looks about right to me. So we'll just let this thing go through its cycle. Okay, now this has been mixing for about 3 minutes. If you take a look at that, it's hard to see, but I think this is a little too thin, so I'm going to add a little bit more flour in there, and just to thicken it up just a little bit. Now as you can see, if you look down there, see how it was sticking to the bottom before and pulling it up around? See, it's still doing it, but see, it's doing it a lot less than it was. And in a little while, it won't be sticking to the bottom anymore. You want to get it to that magic point where it's still kind of sticking like that, but not very much. Okay, while we're waiting for that to mix over there, we'll put some raisins. I think about 1/4 cup is what we need. I don't know if you heard it, but it's stopped right now. You can see it's on minute 54. So it's been mixing about maybe 5 minutes, and it stopped. And the machine is going to let it rest for a little bit, kind of settle out. Now apparently that's important for the yeast gluten to set up. So we'll just let it set for a minute, and it'll start going in a minute. So while we're waiting for that, what we can do is dust it, get this pan dusted. And the way we're going to do that is I'll just spray this. I'll just spray the inside very carefully. And then just put a little bit of flour. I'm going to try to shake this flour around to where it coats everything in the pan. And then I'm going to dump it out here, because this is where we're going to knead the dough a little bit. Okay, I went over here to the oven, and apparently I overdid it. You can see my little temperature gauges. I don't know if you can see them, but they're about the 200 mark. We can't have that. So I opened the oven door, and we're just going to leave it wide open for 5 minutes or so to let it cool down in there a bit. Well, the thing just beeped, and when it beeps like that, that means it's time for the raisins. And you can see I've got about 1/4 cup of raisins in here. Anyway, this is how much we like. But now's the time to put the raisins in. So there we go. And let me take you over here and show you how it looks. If you'll notice in the bottom, like the stuff that was sticking before, see, it's not sticking at all now. And maybe you see it's sticking a little bit on that side right about there, but that's just keeping it from turning. But the dough isn't sticking to anything and staying there. So that's kind of where you want it to be. Okay, as you can see, it's a little. These temperature gauges say it's about 150 in there, but it feels about right. So then the temperature gauges take a little bit of time to react. So I'm going to close this up now to save the heat that we've got in there. And I imagine it's probably 100 degrees or 110 in there or something like that. Okay, the thing just stopped, and if you notice, it says 46 minutes. Now, normally this thing would start, it'll just sit there and let it rise, and then it's going to bake. But what we're going to do is we're going to take it out of here. And here we go. Now this is where, you know, when you pull this out, you can feel how the dough is. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe it's a little too thin, but I'm not sure. But we're going to take it out anyway. If you notice, see inside there, hardly anything stuck to it. I know that's a Teflon surface, but if it was a little bit thinner, it would stick. So the idea here is, you want to get this in shape, but you want to stretch it. Now, so what I'm going to do is, as soon as I get this to where it's not so sticky, I'm going to stretch it like that and fold it over. And then stretch it like that again, stretch it out, fold it over, and do that a few times. Stretch it like that, and fold it over. Do that 3 or 4 times. And now we're going to try to shape it to fit this pan. So, kind of roll it up like a sausage. Now you can do this a little bit better if you get artistic about it, but this is just bread for us here, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, okay, so now we'll put it in the pan, and kind of, if you look at it, you can see that it appears as though the pan, it's about halfway down the pan. And this is going to rise now, and you want it to where it's about that high off the pan before you start baking. So let's go put this in the oven now. I think it's just about right. See, now we'll put it in there, and we've got the light on, and it looks like it still says it's 150, so I think that's just the lag in the temperature, because it sure doesn't feel 150 in there. So we'll go ahead and close it up, and then we'll just keep an eye on it by looking at it. You can see it is a little bit higher. So in 5 minutes it's done that. And I see the temperature there still says 125, but I know it's not 125. And the bread is rising. So we'll wait another probably 10 minutes, and that should be about done. Okay, it's about 5 minutes later now. Let's take another look. Oh yeah, you can see it's at the top basically, maybe a little bit over if we kind of look at this angle. Yeah, see, it's rising quite well. So we'll let it go a little bit more, maybe 5 minutes, something like that. Okay, one more time. Let's have a look. Oh, I'd say that's ready. When we turn the heat on, that will rise up a little bit more. So we could actually let it rise a little bit more on its own right now. It's been about 25 minutes. But see, this is where you have to pay personal attention. Maybe we'll let it go another couple of minutes just to get it up a little higher and then turn the heat on. Okay, here we are another couple of minutes later. Let's take a look. Now, look at that. That's risen. That's about where I want to see it. Now, you see how you have to pay attention? Now, this has been, I'm thinking about 30 minutes rise time. And, sometimes it's 25 and sometimes it's less. But now what we're going to do is turn it on bake. And I'm going to hit it up to about 385. Because I think this this stove has a thermometer or a thermostat that's not quite up to snuff, so it's probably really 370 in there. So 370 should take about 25 minutes. So here we go. Okay, it's been cooking about 15 minutes, and take a look at that. Well, it's steam coming out of there if you can see it. But see, it's starting to get done on top, it's turning brown. I want to have done a little bit more than that, so it's not going to have to cook the full 20 or 30 minutes that I set for it. So I think we'll go another 5 minutes and we'll be done. Okay, well, we took the bread out of the oven, and here is what it looks like. Got a few slices, and let me see here. Let's see. Oh, that feels good. It is good. See how it's sprung. It's sunk a little bit. Now sometimes they do that, and sometimes they don't. But see, this is where you get But just because you're not doing it commercially where everything is controlled, you get different results every time. But anyway, this is really good bread. I can just tell by the feel of it. It's really good. Oh, it's great. Anyway, that's how I make bread.